Hi everyone, Mitch here once again, driving ill-advisedly, and today I wanted to talk about exwm, which is the Emacs window manager. I tried using it, I got it configured so it mostly didn't crash, and I've got a couple things to say. So let's get into it. Number one, having Emacs as your window manager sounds cool, and there's probably a way to make it work, but there are a couple problems. I guess we're in a sub-list now. Problem number one is exiting Emacs. That's the real problem. Because see, what happens is you Control-X, Control-C, and that quits Emacs, unless you've got programs running in sight that are spawned from Emacs, in which case that's when a process is the child of an Emacs, and you try to close that Emacs, it will ask you for confirmation. It has a yes/no pop-up. The problem is, Emacs is the root window, so that pop-up appears behind the Emacs frames that contain your other X windows. So your workspace frames, because the way it works, the way exwm works, is each frame, or each workspace, which if you've got them on separate monitors, each monitor has its own Emacs frame, and when you spawn a window in exwm, by default at least, that window only exists in that frame, like as a buffer. I'm not sure how they do that, and I'd prefer if it weren't like that, but that's how the default is. So, when you take the window, when you close Emacs, when you try to close Emacs, it'll ask you if you want to kill all those processes, close those windows, and you have to say yes. But in order to say yes, it has to be you have to get access to the Emacs behind the Emacs. It's like multiple layers of frames. There's probably a way to get that to not be how it was, but to be frank, I was having so much trouble with this other thing that by the time that was my only problem, yeah, it didn't seem worth solving. The other thing is xorg's handling of monitors is horrible, and I hate it so much. Take me back to Wayland immediately. I went back to Wayland immediately, but the problem with monitors on xorg is that nowadays xorg basically treats all of your monitors like they're one big screen. I'm pretty sure screen is the actual term, because the monitor is the physical hardware, and then it's it's one display containing three screens, but the display itself, like the canvas onto which you can drag your windows, comprises all the screens. That's like display is :0, that means that's the X server it'll launch on. And in order to not have that happen, you have to have a separate X server for each screen, in which case it needs to have a separate display. There's a way of having it not be so, but I couldn't figure it. I spent like several minutes, possibly even hours, trying to read up on like xorg history and why it's like this, and what I got was, in the beginning, you could only have an X server running on an individual display, and then there was Xenorama, yeah, Xenorama, and Xenorama's good because it allows multiple physical displays, physical monitors, to be chained together under a single X server as if they were just one big screen, one big display. And Xenorama had some problems, and so now instead of Xenorama we use xrandr, and xrandr it's a command line tool, and it's just the thing that makes the monitors arrange, and it's kind of based off of Xenorama, but also it's its own thing, and it has its own, and there's basically only one way it works, which is it lets you choose how you want your screens to be placed on the display. So it uses a unified display as you do, but possibly there is a way, I'm pretty sure, to make there not be a display. And anyway, so the way that you set this all is with the command line option. And, you know, there are daemons and GUI configurators that you can have set it up for you and stuff. But the real way you're supposed to do it is with the xorg.conf file. The file's in xorg.conf.d. And they've got this little format that may or may not be Turing complete, but it doesn't matter because it's just a config file format, right? Guys, am I right? Who cares about actual languages for configs when you could just make up some shit? That's Unix way, but that's not my problem with xorg.conf. I don't care what file format is, as long as you can write it and make it do what you want to do. The problem is that there's no user level xorg.conf. There's only the system-wide one in /etc, which is I can't believe I have to explain this. The way that a user wants their monitors to be arranged is a personal thing. Different users of the computer might move their monitors around between usages. I'm not saying it's probable, but like that's a thing you should be able to account for. How in the frick is there no .config/xorg.conf? How is that not a file that's read? How is that not a thing that exists and is used to configure xorg with xrandr and xenorama and all of these things when it's starting up for that given user? Why does this have to be a big fancy system-wide thing? Don't give me any of that, oh, xorg is running as root, so it shouldn't be able to read the user. It's sourcing your xinetRC. It's the user's configuration that xorg is running on. There's no reason why xorg.conf itself shouldn't be sourced from the user. That's the point of configuration files. There's already so many other things that just work that way. Why can't we have user level xorg.conf? That's my big issue. That's what I don't like. And so the solution then is, oh, you just figure out the xrandr command that puts everything where you want it, and you put that in your xinetRC. Okay, I'll just do that then. But I'd like to be able to use the config file format because it's better than a dash. You've got to have like backslashes, or you just got to have a really long line in the shell script so it wraps over and over. It's like, I don't like that. Well, and then you add exwm into the mix, which is adding Emacs into the mix, which means you're adding Lisp into the mix. And so the Emacs way of doing it is you've got an A list. No, it's a P list. Yeah, it's a P list, not an A list. A list is like each key value pair is its own sublist, whereas a P list is just every other one. Like you'll have colon syntax, and then a string, and then another colon thing, and then a string. And that's how P list works. It's flatter than an A list. But A lists can be nice programmatically, but P lists allow for a little bit. You know what? It doesn't matter. There's just two different types of lists that can coexist, and some of the mechanics of them are abusable. But let's not worry about that right now. There is a P list for exwm that you set that puts workspaces on monitors. That's great. That's fine. I like that. There's also two of those variables that have different names but do the exact same thing, except one of them doesn't work. And I was setting the wrong one until I started setting the right one. So that's just a little bit of cruft, I guess. Might be my fault. I might have just been looking at the documentation wrong. But either way, that's doesn't bode well. And then you said that, and it's fine, but like xorg, here's the third thing, I guess, not that we're counting correctly, but the third thing that I'm upset with is xorg sucks, and xorg over VNC connection is slow, and the redraws are ugly. What do I mean by that? So VNC stands for like virtual network computing or something. Basically, it's remote desktop for Linux. There are different types of remote desktop software. The popular one for Windows is the RDP protocol, which stands for Remote Desktop Protocol, because who cares about coming up with descriptive names, am I right? Or you can either have an interesting name or you can have a descriptive name, and that's very clearly a descriptive name. VNC is just, you just call it VNC, and then you don't worry about what the letters stand for because it's VNC. Anyway, so there's two different ways that you can use VNC on X11, like to serve the VNC desktop to the outside world. One way is you start up xVNC, and what that does, or VNC server or whatever, you install the big package Tiger VNC, and then Tiger VNC gives you a whole bunch of commands, and it also gives you a nasty, ugly, ancient GUI, and you can click through the GUI to find out what options there are, and then when you go to the command line, you have to read the man page because the options are all in like weird MIT format with a single dash and then capital letters and then equal signs for the values, the keys. And anyway, VNC, the main xVNC thing is it creates a new display that's separate from whatever physical displays you have connected. Just throws up this display in the air, and then anyone who wants to can catch it. Or anyone you give your password to if you use a password, which you definitely should, but I'm not, because I'm just bouncing the thing back and forth through my house, because the way that my computer works, it only has the ability to show through two monitors, so in order to hook my third monitor up, I have to beam the VNC to the computer across the room, and then run an HDMI cable over the ceiling back to the monitor that I have plonked on top of my laptop. It's a whole thing. It's kind of janky. I wrote a Tumblr post about it. Doesn't matter. Don't find my Tumblr, please. But anyway, that's kind of a thing. But the problem with that, of course, is that that's a whole separate display, a whole separate X server, basically, and it's not connected to whatever physical displays you've got. Sorry. Long day, big lunch, tired. But the other way is X11 VNC, which is very specifically the name of the program. It's X11 VNC, and it copies your X desktop as it exists out to the outside world, say to your other computer. This is what I want, because what I really want to do is mirror the display of my laptop that's closed to a monitor that's bigger but the same resolution that's sitting on top of it, so that instead of having a big monitor and a little monitor and an awkward sideways monitor, I have a big monitor and another big monitor and then awkward sideways. And that awkward sideways is just because it's a lower resolution, and I usually just put it sideways and have the system monitor on there, so that there's a system monitor on there. It's nice. Because otherwise, things get a little bit weirder. At my old place, there was like... On my old place, I had a massive windowsill. It was like the walls were concrete and they were a foot thick, and I could just set the laptop on there, and everything would just have to go across the pillar that was like in the middle of my setup. And it was a nice little dividing line, so I had the two monitors on the desk and then the laptop off to the side, and I had the system monitor app on the task manager, you know what you call it, whatever you want to call it. The task manager I had on the laptop. But now, with the laptop in the middle, task monitor on the low resolution monitor vertical, and then basically one good monitor on the side. I finally decided a few weeks ago, you know what, no, I'm gonna plonk a nice 1080 monitor, you know, the cheapest 1080 monitor I can find. It was the display copy at the store, so when the guy packed it up for me, he forgot to give me the cable, and I had to like root around my house and find a cable, and then I realized I didn't have any cables, so I finally went back to the store and I was just going to buy one. But luckily the guy who had replaced him on the shift briefly saw me leaving and was like, hey, do you need this cable? I was like, yes, actually, that's exactly what I came here for. Thank you so much, and have a great day, sir. Thank you so, yeah. So that was really nice of him. I'm glad that worked out for us. And that's not what I came here to talk about. But what it does relate to is that over on Wayland, there's something very similar to XVNC, which is on Wayland called WayVNC, and it's the VNC connection exposes the existing desktop out to whoever has your password, and when you WayVNC into the machine, the mouse just goes right over. I mean, I had to play around with settings for hours and hours to get the mouse cursor to show up, but once I figured out how to get the mouse cursor to show up, it was really nice. It's super smooth. When I hooked it back up again when the extra stuff wasn't working out, it was super smooth. But xorg, for some reason, with all of the different settings, it just won't get that smooth. Like, there's more lag. When you scroll, it like tears. Keep in mind, this is the exact same network connection, exact same cable, exact same everything, and yet Wayland is a breeze. Wayland, it feels like these things really are communicating at the speed of light. xorg, it's like, well, now you're just communicating at the speed of chunky soup going through a small straw. you know? It's like, ugh. I didn't buy a 25-foot HDMI cable and a $100 monitor just so I could get a connection that feels like eating ramen through a straw, you know? You know? Like, come on. So that is why I figured, I just can't do this, and I switched back to Wayland. I like the idea of the XWM. I really like being able to configure things inside of Emacs, and I wish that it worked better than it does. I might have to give another crack to Xmonad if I can sort out the damn VNC issue, but for now, that's kind of all there is to say. EXWM, not for me right now, but maybe for you. If the things that I'm talking about don't apply to you, you'll love EXWM. But for me right now, it's just making it too hard. Also, life gets in the way, and I've got too much stuff to do to be playing with my window manager at the moment. Although it's never stopped me before, you know, I was getting kicked out of my house and I was trying out Sway for the first time. It was great. Anyway, rambling aside, that's all I wanted to say about that. EXWM, VNC, and xorg stuff. Bye.